In this video we're going to take a look at using a faceplate with the wood lathe. Now you typically use a faceplate if you're mounting up a piece of wood to create a bowl rather than a spindle, which you may be more used to using in class. Now you will not be asked to physically make something like this for the National 5 woodworking course, but you might well be asked about it in the paper, as it is part of the theory for the course. Now the large metal disc that you can see on the screen is the actual faceplate itself, and we're attaching it to the blank that we're going to be creating our bowl from with a set of screws. Now we don't want to go too deep with these because where the screws are going to meet the wood, we're going to have a little bit of wastage. We obviously can't put any tools too close to these while it's spinning on the lathe because we're going to be taking a risk that we'll hit the screws, and we obviously don't want to do that. We want to mount it securely though, so we're spacing these out fairly evenly, and as you can see there, it's now fairly firmly attached. Now the wood lathes that we're using at the minute have got replaceable centres at the front, so we need to remove the forked centre first before mounting the faceplate onto. Now this is easy enough. We've got 2 screw threads and we simply spin it into position. Now tighten it up as much as we can by hand, and then give it a little extra tighten using a wrench just to make sure that we are firmly secured. You can also just about see a little circle on the edge of the plate there. If it gets stuck when you're taking it off, you can use a metal tool into there to give you a bit more purchase to spin it. Now, as it's only mounted on the machine at the headstock end, we can bring the tool rest right the way around to get more access to the internal side of the bowl. Now we're starting by resting our gouge on the tool rest. We're going to begin in the centre of the blank and work our way towards the outside edge. Now the wood, as it's mounted on the lathe here, you can see is spinning in an anti-clockwise direction. So right now it's spinning down towards the tip of the blade. Now if we moved our gouge to the other side, so from the centre in the opposite direction, what it would be doing is the wood would be spinning around and hitting the bottom of the tool and basically just bouncing it up off the tool rest, so that wouldn't work for us. We obviously want to take this fairly slowly and carefully. You can see this footage is sped up. If we're trying to rush things too much on the lathe, that can be a point where we make mistakes. So that should be the majority of the scrap taken out of the inside there. We're just going to level off this little centre component in a second here, just tidying out. Now obviously, as I'm saying, it's about taking your time with this, and you can see we're finishing up with the gouge, and we're going to swap over to the round nose scraper just to get a little more control while we're levelling out the centre here, as it has kind of come out into a little bit of a mound. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the outside of the blank, and let me say this is very similar to how we would work on a spindle. We're going to start out with our big roughing gouge. The outside edge of the wood is still needing rounded out quite a lot. Now we just want to take this slowly because this is quite a big blank. If we try and go too fast, we can cause ourselves some issues, but as you can see, the technique's the same. On the tool rest, side to side, and once we've taken the worst off, we're working through the tools. Going to the round nose scraper will give us a little more control and just give us a slightly tidier finished surface. So we'll spend a little bit of time rounding up this shape before moving on to to the next step. Now, while the ball's still on the lathe, we know that we can sand it down. This is going to save us a little bit of time to then try to do this on the bench. We've moved the tool rest out of the way, and obviously we'd have the extraction a little closer, but to do that in the video we just obscure it, you won't be able to see what we're doing. So we're starting out working through the grades. Again, you'll see that the coarse paper is going to be the first one there, and going to medium and fine. Just remember that the lathe is spinning while you're doing this, so try not to keep your hands in one place for too long, as that friction can cause the paper heat up quite a bit more than you think it should in quite a short space of time. Next out, we're just going to use the parting tool to take out a little bit of the scrap at the base here. This is going to let us saw off the remaining waste more easily. So it's just a case of tidying out and giving us a nice flat base once we've sawn this off. Now that we've created our shape, we're essentially just going to remove the faceplate from the bottom by undoing the screws, and all that remains really is to take off the remains of that waste wood with a saw.